The stagecoach door swung open, and Zachary Barrett saw immediately that something was terribly wrong with the woman who was supposed to become his wife. She descended the wooden steps with mechanical precision, her face devoid of expression, her green eyes vacant as a winter sky, and when he extended his hand to help her down that final step in the dusty main street of Sweetwater, Montana, she flinched so violently that she nearly fell. It was August of 1873, and the afternoon sun blazed overhead with relentless heat. Zachary had waited 3 months for this moment after responding to her advertisement in the Boston Matrimonial News, exchanging letters that had seemed warm and hopeful. The woman in those letters had described her love of reading, her skill with a needle, her dreams of seeing the Western Territories. This hollow-eyed creature before him bore only a physical resemblance to the photograph she had sent. Miss Nora Collins. He asked gently, lowering his hand to his side when she continued to stare at it as though it were a weapon. She nodded once, a sharp mechanical movement. "I am Zachary Barrett. We have been writing to one another." He kept his voice soft, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "Welcome to Sweetwater." "Thank you." The words emerged flat and rehearsed. She clutched a small carpetbag to her chest like a shield, her knuckles white against the worn fabric. Her dress, once a fine blue cotton, hung loose on her frame, and he could see the sharp angles of her collarbones above the high neckline. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and a healing cut marked her lower lip. The stagecoach driver tossed down a battered trunk that looked as though it had been kicked down a mountainside. Zachary caught the meaningful look the man gave him before climbing back onto his seat and snapping the reins. The stage rumbled away in a cloud of dust, leaving them standing in front of the general store while curious townspeople pretended not to watch. "I have a wagon just here," Zachary said, gesturing to where his team of horses waited patiently. "The ranch is about an hour outside town. If you need anything from the store first, we can stop." "No." Then, as if remembering herself, "No, thank you." He lifted her trunk, surprised by how light it was, and secured it in the wagon bed. When he turned back, she still stood in the same spot, that carpetbag clutched tight, her gaze fixed on some middle distance that only she could see. "Miss Collins, are you ready?" She blinked slowly and walked to the wagon. When he moved to help her up, she scrambled away from him and hauled herself onto the seat with awkward determination, her hands shaking so badly she nearly lost her grip. Zachary felt something crack open in his chest. Whatever had happened to this woman, it had stolen something vital from her. He climbed up beside her, careful to leave plenty of space between them, and clicked softly to the horses. They pulled away from town, heading west toward the mountains that rose like purple sentinels against the horizon. The afternoon light painted the grasslands gold, and normally Zachary would have pointed out landmarks or tried to make conversation, but Nora sat rigid as stone, her entire body tensed as though expecting a blow. After 20 minutes of silence broken only by the creak of the wagon and the steady clip of hooves, he tried again. "It is beautiful country out here. Takes some getting used to if you are from the city." "Nothing. I have about 200 head of cattle, some horses. The house is not fancy, but it is solid. Built it myself 4 years ago when I bought the land. Still nothing." He let the quiet settle again, his mind working. In her letters, Nora had written about working as a seamstress in Boston, living with an elderly aunt who had recently passed away. She had been articulate and warm, describing the theater productions she had seen, the books she had read, asking intelligent questions about ranch life and the Montana Territory. This silent, frightened woman seemed like an entirely different person. When they finally reached his property, marked by a simple wooden arch with the Barrett brand burned into it. Nora showed her first reaction. Her hands tightened even further on that carpetbag, and a small sound escaped her throat, something between a whimper and a gasp. "You are safe here," Zachary said quietly. "I give you my word." She did not respond, but he saw her throat work as she swallowed hard. The house came into view, a sturdy two-story structure with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. He had spent the last month making repairs, painting, fixing things he had let slide during his years alone. Behind it sat the barn, the bunkhouse, several smaller outbuildings. Chickens scratched in the yard, and his 2 cattle dogs came racing up, barking their greetings. Nora made that sound again and pressed herself back against the wagon seat. "Down," Zachary commanded sharply, and both dogs immediately dropped to their bellies, though their tails continued wagging furiously. "They will not hurt you. They have never bitten anyone." He set the brake and jumped down, then stood well back from the wagon. "I will show you the house. You can have the upstairs bedroom. I sleep downstairs, and I will stay downstairs." She stared at him for a long moment, those green eyes searching his face for something. Whatever she found or did not find there, she slowly climbed down from the wagon, again refusing any assistance. He carried her trunk up the porch steps and held the door open, letting her enter first. She moved like a rabbit venturing from its burrow, quick darting glances taking in everything. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and parlor combined. He had never been one for decorating, but he had scrubbed everything clean and put fresh curtains on the windows. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and his mother's old rocking chair sat beside it, the only piece of furniture he had brought from his childhood home in Kansas. "Upstairs," he said, leading the way up the narrow staircase. 2 doors opened off the small landing. He pushed open the first. "This will be your room. It has a lock on the inside of the door. I want you to use it." That got a reaction. Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time she looked directly at him. "I mean what I said outside. You are safe here, Miss Collins. Whatever you need, whatever time you need, I will not push you. We can talk about the marriage arrangement when you are ready. For now, you are a guest in my home." He set the trunk down at the foot of the bed, which he had made up with clean sheets and his grandmother's quilt. "I will bring your other bag up. There is a pitcher and basin for washing. The outhouse is behind the kitchen, but I also have a chamber pot under the bed if you need it at night. I will start dinner in about an hour." He left before she could respond, pulling the door closed behind him. Downstairs, he braced his hands on the kitchen table and took a deep breath. The woman who had just arrived bore almost no resemblance to the one he had been writing to for 3 months. Something terrible had happened, that much was clear. The question was what he should do about it. His own mother had always said that actions mattered more than words, that people showed their true nature in how they treated those weaker than themselves. Zachary had seen too many men in this territory who thought a woman was property, something to be used and discarded. He had seen his own mother suffer under his father's harsh hand, until the day she died when Zachary was 15. He had made a vow then that he would never raise his hand to a woman, never make one afraid in her own home. This Nora Collins was terrified. Whatever promises they had made through letters were null until she could make them freely, without fear. He went back out to the wagon, retrieved her carpetbag, and carried it upstairs. He knocked softly on her door, and when there was no answer, he set the bag in front of it and retreated. An hour later, he had chicken frying in the pan, potatoes boiling, and biscuits in the oven. The cooking smells filled the house, and his stomach growled in appreciation. He had learned to cook adequately during his years alone, though he would never claim to be talented at it. He was setting the table when he heard the soft creak of footsteps on the stairs. Nora appeared in the doorway, still wearing the same dress but with her dark hair now neatly braided. She had washed her face, and the dust of travel was gone, but that hollow look remained in her eyes. "Dinner is almost ready," he said casually, as if there was nothing unusual about this situation. "I hope you like fried chicken. I am afraid I am not much of a cook, but I manage the basics well enough." She hovered in the doorway, neither entering nor retreating. "Would you like to sit down?" He gestured to the table. "Or if you would prefer, I can bring a plate up to your room. Here is fine." Her voice was barely above a whisper. She moved to the chair farthest from where he stood and sat down slowly, her posture rigid. Zachary filled 2 plates and set one in front of her before taking his own seat at the opposite end of the table, maximizing the distance between them. They ate in silence. Nora picked at her food, taking small mechanical bites, chewing thoroughly before swallowing as though it required conscious thought. She ate maybe a quarter of what he had given her before setting down her fork with finality. "Was it not good?" he asked. "It was fine. I am not very hungry." He studied her carefully. "When did you last eat a full meal?" She did not answer, but her hands twisted together in her lap. "Miss Collins," he said gently, "I do not want to pry into your business, but you look like you have been through something difficult. If there is anything I can do to help, I hope you will tell me." For a long moment she was silent. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, "You cannot help. No one can. Maybe not. But I can try." She looked up at him then, really looked at him for the first time. He saw despair in those green eyes and pain so deep it made his chest ache. "Why?" she asked. "You do not know me. I am not what you expected. You could put me back on that stagecoach tomorrow, send me away." "I could," he agreed, "but I will not. You came all this way to marry me, and that took courage. Whatever has happened, you are here now, and I keep my word. I said in my letters that I was looking for a wife, a partner. I meant it. Partners help each other, even when one of them is broken." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. "No one is so broken they cannot be mended," Zachary said firmly. "It might take time and patience, but nothing is beyond repair if someone is willing to do the work." A single tear traced down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly, angrily. "You do not understand what you are saying. Then explain it to me." She stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the wooden floor. "Thank you for dinner. I would like to go to my room now." He did not try to stop her. She practically fled up the stairs, and moments later he heard the click of the lock engaging. He sat alone at the table, looking at her barely touched plate, and wondered what sort of hell she had escaped. The next morning, he woke before dawn as always and went about his chores. The cattle needed checking, the horses needed feeding, and there were a dozen other tasks that demanded attention. He left a plate of eggs and bacon warming on the stove, along with fresh coffee in the pot, and headed out. When he returned around mid-morning, the food was untouched, and there was no sign that Nora had come downstairs. He climbed to her door and knocked softly. "Miss Collins, are you all right?" Silence. "There is breakfast waiting if you are hungry." "I have to ride out to the north pasture to check on some cattle. I will be back around supper time." Still no response, but he heard a faint movement from within, so at least she was alive and awake. He spent the day riding fence lines and checking on his small herd. The work was familiar, almost meditative, and it gave him time to think. The woman upstairs was deeply traumatized by something. The way she flinched from touch, the fear in her eyes, the weight she had clearly lost, it all pointed to some kind of abuse. But whose? The aunt she had mentioned in her letters. Someone else. He remembered the letters they had exchanged, the personality that had shone through. She had been witty, asking him whether he preferred Dickens or Hawthorne, and teasing him about his admission that he had never read anything by either author. She had drawn a little sketch of a cat in the margin of one letter, claiming it was her aunt's pet. She had seemed hopeful about the future, excited even, not desperate or fleeing something. Something had changed between her last letter and her arrival, something catastrophic. When he returned to the ranch that evening, he found the breakfast dishes washed and stacked neatly, but nothing else disturbed. He made a simple stew for dinner and knocked on her door again. This time she answered. "Yes, dinner is ready. Would you like to come down, or shall I bring it up?" A long pause. "I will come down." She appeared a few minutes later wearing a different dress, this one gray and equally loose on her thin frame. Her hair was again neatly done, her face clean, but those shadows under her eyes seemed even darker. They ate in the same strained silence as the night before. She ate slightly more this time, perhaps a third of her plate, and drank a full glass of water. Progress, he supposed. "I washed the dishes from this morning," she said suddenly. "I hope that was all right." "Of course. You do not have to ask permission for things like that. I should be doing more. The house, the cooking. I am supposed to be a wife. Right now, you are supposed to be recovering from whatever journey you had. There is time for everything else later." She set down her fork and looked at him with those haunted eyes. "You keep being kind. I do not understand why. Is kindness so unusual that it confuses you?" "In my experience, yes." Zachary felt that crack in his chest widen. "Then your experience has been with the wrong sort of people." "My experience has been with the world as it is, Mr. Barrett. Call me Zachary. And the world can be harsh, that is true. But it can also be good. There are good people in it trying to do right. And you are one of these good people." There was something in her voice, not quite mockery, but something close to disbelief. "I try to be. I fail sometimes, but I try." She studied him for a long moment. "Why do you want a wife? A man like you with land and a home, you could have your pick of women around here. Why send away for a stranger?" "The same reason you agreed to come west and marry a stranger, I imagine. Hope for something better." "And what were you hoping for?" He considered the question carefully. "Companionship, partnership, someone to share the work and the rewards of this life. Maybe children someday. A family." He paused. "I grew up in a house where there was no love, only duty and often cruelty. When I left home, I promised myself that if I ever had a family of my own, it would be different. It would be built on respect and care, not on power and fear." Something shifted in her expression, a tiny crack in that blank mask. "Your father was not a good man. He died when I was 17. I took care of my mother until she passed 2 years later, then I headed west. I have been in Montana for 6 years now, built this ranch from nothing." He gestured around the simple but sturdy house. "I am 30 years old and I am tired of being alone, but I want the right kind of companionship, not just anyone to warm my bed and cook my meals. I want a real partner." "That is why your letters were so different," she said quietly. "You actually meant what you wrote. Every word, did you?" "Yes." The word came out broken. "Yes, I meant every word. I wanted to escape Boston, wanted a new life somewhere far away. I thought Montana would be far enough." "Far enough from what?" She stood abruptly again, and he cursed himself for pushing. "I am tired. Thank you for dinner." "Miss Collins, Nora, wait." He stood too, but made no move toward her. "I am sorry. I should not have pried. You have a right to know what you are getting. What broken thing has arrived on your doorstep?" Her voice was bitter now, angry in a way that was somehow healthier than that terrible blankness. "You have a right to know that the woman you were writing to died somewhere between Boston and here, and I am just what is left. You are still you. Still Nora Collins. Still the woman who loves Dickens and draws little cats in the margins of letters. Whatever happened did not kill that woman. It hurt her badly, but she is still here. How can you possibly know that? Because you washed the breakfast dishes. Because you came down for dinner even though it scared you. Because you are still fighting even when you think you are not. He took a careful breath. And because I am looking at you right now, and I see someone strong enough to survive whatever hell you went through and still get on that stagecoach to come here. That takes more courage than most people have. She wrapped her arms around herself, a gesture of protection and vulnerability at once. He was my aunt's lawyer. After she died, he handled the estate. I had nowhere to live, no family, very little money. He offered to let me stay in the house until I figured out what to do. He seemed kind at first. Zachary felt cold rage begin to build in his gut, but he kept his voice gentle. You do not have to tell me this. Yes, I do, because you need to understand what you are dealing with, what he did. She was speaking faster now, words spilling out like poison she needed to expel. It started with small things, comments about my appearance, standing too close. Then one night he came to my room. When I fought him, he beat me, said I owed him for his generosity. Said no one would believe me over him, that I was nothing, a penniless orphan with nowhere to go. Jesus. The word came out as a prayer. It went on for 2 months. He kept me locked in the house. I finally managed to escape when he got drunk one night and forgot to lock the door. I ran straight to the stagecoach station with whatever I could carry and bought a ticket with the last of my money. Your letters were the only thing I had left that felt clean and good, so I came here even though I knew I should not. I knew you were expecting someone whole, not this. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Zachary felt his own eyes burn. I am glad you came here, he said hoarsely. I am glad you got away from him, and I am so sorry that happened to you. No one deserves that, no one. Now you know, so if you want me to leave, I understand. I do not want you to leave, he said it firmly, letting no doubt color his words. What I want is for you to feel safe here. What I want is time to show you that not all men are like that bastard. What I want is to help you heal if you will let me. Why? It was almost a wail. Why would you do that for someone you do not even know? Because it is the right thing to do. Because you deserve kindness and safety. Because I meant what I said in my letters about wanting a real partner, and that means standing by you through hard times, not just easy ones. He paused. And because I think if you give yourself time to heal, you might find that the woman who wrote me those letters is still in there, waiting to come back. She sank back into her chair as though her legs would no longer hold her. I do not think I can be a wife, not the way you want. Not the way a man expects. Then do not be. Not yet, maybe not for a long time. Just be Nora Collins, a woman who is safe and cared for. The rest can wait, or it can never happen. Either way, you have a home here for as long as you want it. You are not what I expected either, she whispered. No, I expected someone harder, more demanding. Most men in those matrimonial papers just want servants and bedmates. Your letters were different, but I thought maybe you were lying, presenting yourself as better than you were. Men do that. Some do. I tried to be honest. I am not perfect, Nora. I lose my temper sometimes, especially when a fence breaks for the 3rd time in a week, or when a calf gets stuck in the mud. I can be stubborn. I talk to my horses more than is probably normal. I leave my boots wherever I take them off, which drives me crazy when I cannot find them later. But I am not violent, and I do not hurt people weaker than me, that I can promise you. She wiped at her tears with shaking hands. What do we do now? Now you go upstairs and lock your door and sleep as late as you want tomorrow. I will do my work like always. You can come down when you are ready or not. We take it one day at a time until things get easier. And the marriage, when and if you want it, not before. She stood slowly, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. Thank you, Zachary. It was the first time she had used his given name, and something warm bloomed in his chest, despite the awfulness of everything she had told him. Sleep well, Nora. She climbed the stairs, and he heard the lock click into place. He sat alone in the kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing, processing everything she had told him. A righteous anger burned in him for what had been done to her, but beneath that was a fierce protectiveness. She was here now, under his roof, and he would be damned if anyone ever hurt her again. The days fell into a rhythm. Zachary rose with the sun, did his chores, left breakfast waiting. Nora came down when she was ready, sometimes eating the cold breakfast, sometimes making something fresh. She began cleaning the house, organizing things, and though he told her repeatedly that she did not have to, she insisted she needed something to do. Sitting alone in that room makes the thoughts louder, she explained one morning about a week after her arrival. I need to keep my hands busy. So he let her work, and the house began to transform. She washed curtains and beat rugs, scrubbed floors and polished windows. She found his mother's old dishes packed away in a crate and washed them carefully, setting them in the cupboard. She even tackled the disaster that was his attempt at a vegetable garden, pulling weeds and watering the struggling plants until they began to perk up. She still flinched when he moved too quickly or came too close, but gradually the wild fear in her eyes began to fade, replaced by cautious watchfulness. They ate dinner together every evening, and slowly, hesitantly, she began to talk. Small things at first, comments about the weather or questions about the ranch. Then longer conversations about books and ideas and the world beyond Sweetwater. The woman from the letters was emerging, bit by bit. One evening about 3 weeks after her arrival, Zachary came in from a long day of hauling hay to find the kitchen filled with the smell of baking bread. Nora stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot, and for a moment he just stopped and stared. She had gained a little weight, though she was still too thin and some color had returned to her cheeks. She had pinned her dark hair up loosely and she was humming softly to herself. She looked up and caught him staring. What? Nothing. It smells wonderful in here. I found your stores of flour and yeast. I hope you do not mind. I used to bake with my aunt before she got too sick, and I thought I would try to remember how. Mind, I have been eating my own terrible cooking for years. This is a gift. She almost smiled. Not quite, but almost, and that felt like a victory. Dinner that night was the best meal he had eaten since leaving Kansas. Nora had made a stew thick with vegetables and beef, fresh bread with butter, and even a simple cake for dessert. Where did you learn to cook like this? He asked around a mouthful of bread. My aunt taught me. Before my parents died when I was 12, my mother did too. I worked for a while in a bakery when I was younger before I started sewing full-time. She picked at her own food, eating slowly but steadily. I liked baking. There is something satisfying about following a recipe exactly and having it turn out right. Well, you have a gift for it. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, then Zachary said, I need to go into town tomorrow for supplies. Would you like to come? You could meet some of the neighbors, see the town properly in daylight. She tensed immediately. I do not think I am ready for that. That is fine. I just thought I would offer. But Nora, at some point you will want to meet people. Sweetwater is small, but the folks here are decent. Mrs. Henley, who runs the general store, is one of the kindest women I have ever met. Doc Morrison and his wife are good people. You would like them. Maybe, but not yet. Whenever you are ready. She looked at him across the table, her expression troubled. You are very patient with me. I told you we have time. But do not you want more? A real wife, a real marriage. He chose his words carefully. What I want is for you to heal. What I want is to know you better as a person, not just words on paper. What I want is to build something real with you, but that cannot happen if you are still terrified. So yes, someday I hope we will have a true marriage in every sense, but I can wait for someday. What if someday never comes? What if I am always like this? Then we adjust. Maybe we become partners and friends who help each other, but nothing more. Maybe over time you heal enough to want more. I do not have a crystal ball, Nora. I cannot see the future. All I can do is try to do right by you today and trust that tomorrow will take care of itself. She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. I do not deserve your patience. Yes, you do. Everyone deserves patience and kindness. You have just been around people who made you think otherwise. That night, after she went upstairs, Zachary sat on the porch in the gathering darkness and let himself think about the future. He had meant what he said to her. He could be patient, could wait for her to heal. But he was also human, and the more time he spent with her, the more he found himself drawn to who she was. Her quiet strength, her determination to keep going despite everything, her flashes of humor when she forgot to be afraid, they all called to something deep in him. He was falling for her, this broken, brave woman who had landed on his doorstep. But he could not tell her that, not yet. She needed to feel safe first, needed to know he would not use her vulnerability against her. So he would wait. The next morning, he rode into Sweetwater and handled his business quickly, eager to get back to the ranch. Mrs. Henley, the general store owner, gave him a knowing look as he purchased more flour and sugar than he usually bought. "I hear your mail-order bride arrived a few weeks back," she said, her round face friendly and curious. "When are you going to bring her into town so we can meet her properly, when she is ready? The journey out here was hard on her. She is still settling in." "Well, you tell her that whenever she wants to come in for tea, my door is open. It must be lonely out there with just you for company. No offense meant. None taken. I will tell her." He loaded his supplies and headed back, but as he approached the ranch, he noticed something wrong. The dogs were barking frantically, and he could hear the cattle making distressed sounds. He urged his horses faster. When he reached the yard, he saw the problem immediately. A mountain lion, bold in broad daylight, had gotten into the calf pen and was circling a terrified calf that had gotten separated from its mother. The cows in the main pen were going crazy, and his dogs were barking themselves hoarse but too smart to approach a full-grown cat. Zachary grabbed his rifle from the wagon and fired a shot into the air. The mountain lion startled and retreated several yards but did not leave entirely, its tail lashing as it assessed this new threat. He fired again, this time closer, and the cat finally decided the meal was not worth the trouble and melted away into the tall grass. He was checking the calf for injuries when Nora came running from the house, her face white. "I heard shots. Are you hurt?" "I am fine." "Mountain lion after the cattle, but he is gone now." He looked up at her, startled by her concern. "I am all right, truly." She sagged with relief against the fence, her hand pressed to her chest. "I thought maybe someone had come, someone from back east." The fear in her voice made him stand and walk over to her, though he was careful to stop several feet away. "No one is coming for you, and if they did, they would have to go through me first. You do not understand what he is like. He has money, connections. If he wanted to find me, he could." "Then let him try. This is Montana territory, not Boston. Out here, a man is judged by his actions, not his bank account, and any man who hurt a woman under my protection would find himself in serious trouble. You cannot know that." "Yes, I can. I have friends in this territory, Nora. Good men who believe in doing right. If this bastard shows his face here, he will regret it." She wrapped her arms around herself, but he saw something new in her expression, not just fear but also tentative hope. "Thank you. Nothing to thank me for." Now, I need to get this calf back with its mother and then I will unload these supplies. I bought extra flour and sugar since someone has been baking." He smiled at her, and for the first time since her arrival, she smiled back. It was a small smile, hesitant and brief, but it transformed her face. For just a moment, he saw what she must have looked like before that monster got his hands on her, full of life and light. Then the smile faded and the shadows returned, but he held onto that glimpse like a promise. Things continued to improve slowly. Nora began venturing outside more, first just to the porch, then to the garden, then to the chicken coop to collect eggs. She was wary of the horses at first, their size intimidating, but Zachary introduced her to his gentlest mare, a sweet-tempered buckskin named Sage. "She is getting old," he explained as Nora tentatively touched the horse's soft nose. "I do not work her much anymore, but she likes company. You could come out and brush her sometimes if you wanted. She would appreciate it." So Nora began spending time in the barn, grooming Sage and talking to her in a soft voice. Zachary would sometimes hear her out there, telling the horse things she would not tell him, and he was glad she had found an outlet. Animals could be healing in ways people could not. One afternoon in late September, nearly 2 months after Nora's arrival, Zachary was in the barn repairing a broken bridle when she appeared in the doorway, a piece of paper clutched in her hand. "Can you take me into town?" she asked without preamble. He set down his tools. "Of course. When?" "Now. I need to mail this before I lose my nerve." He did not ask what it was. "Let me hitch up the wagon." 20 minutes later, they were rolling toward Sweetwater. Nora sat stiffly beside him, that paper held carefully in both hands. As they approached town, he saw her grip tighten. "We do not have to do this today," he said gently. "Yes, we do." Her voice was firm. "I need to do this." He pulled up in front of the post office, a small building that also served as the telegraph office. Nora climbed down before he could offer help and walked inside with determined steps. He waited, giving her space to do whatever she needed to do. She emerged 10 minutes later, her face pale but resolute. "Can we go home now?" "Sure. Do you want to tell me what that was about?" "I wrote to the police in Boston, told them everything that happened. I do not know if they will do anything, but I needed to say it, needed to make it official." Pride swelled in his chest. "That took courage, or stupidity. If they do investigate, he will know where I am. The return address is the Sweetwater post office." "Good, let him know. Let him understand that you are not afraid anymore, that you are not alone." He paused. "Are you ready to head back, or would you like to stop at the general store? Mrs. Henley has been dying to meet you." She considered for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but just for a minute, Mrs. Henley was delighted to finally meet Nora and swept her into the store with warm enthusiasm, chattering about fabrics and supplies and town gossip. Zachary hung back, letting them talk, watching as Nora slowly relaxed under the older woman's friendly assault. When they finally left with several packages of goods, including some new fabric that Mrs. Henley had insisted Nora needed for making new dresses, Nora was smiling again. That same small, tentative smile, but genuine. "She is a lot," Nora said as they drove home. "She is, but she has a good heart. She kept asking me questions about how we met. I did not know what to say. The truth works. We wrote letters, you came west, we are figuring things out as we go. No one needs to know more than that." She was quiet for a moment. She assumed we were already properly married. I did not correct her. "Do you want to be properly married, I mean?" Her hands twisted in her lap. "I do not know, part of me does. Part of me still thinks I can never be what a husband would want." "What do you think a husband wants?" "Physical things. Things I cannot give." He pulled the wagon to a stop, right there in the middle of the road, and turned to face her. "Can I tell you what I want?" She nodded, her eyes wide. I want someone who talks to me at dinner, someone who makes the house feel like a home, someone who argues with me about whether Dickens is better than Hawthorne, even though you are clearly wrong because Hawthorne is far superior." That got a surprised laugh from her, a real one. "I want someone I can trust and rely on, someone who will tell me when I am being stubborn or foolish, someone to share the work and the rewards of this life. Yes, eventually I hope for physical closeness too. I am not a saint. But that is not the foundation. That is something that should come naturally when two people trust each other enough, when they want to express what they feel in that way. It should not be an obligation or a duty. That is not how most men think. Then most men are fools." He picked up the reins again but did not start the horses moving yet. "Nora, I am not going to lie to you. I find you attractive, even when you first arrived looking half-starved and terrified. But more than that, I like who you are. I like the woman I have gotten to know these past 2 months. I like your sharp wit and your determination. I like the way you hum when you bake, and the way you talk to Sage when you think no one is listening. I like you the person, not just the idea of having a wife." "I like you too," she whispered. "That is what scares me. After what happened, I thought I would never want to be close to a man again, but sometimes when you smile at me or when we talk at dinner, I feel something. Something I thought was dead. That is not scary, that is good. What if I disappoint you? What if I can never be normal again? There is no normal, Nora. Everyone is shaped by what they have been through. You are not broken, you are healing. Those are different things." He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and gently touched her hand where it rested on the wagon seat. "May I?" She did not pull away, so he covered her hand with his touch light enough that she could easily break it if she wanted. They sat like that for a long moment, hands barely touching, and he felt her trembling. "This is all right?" he asked. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, this is all right." They drove home like that, his hand covering hers, both of them taking this small step forward into uncertain territory. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Nora moving around the kitchen while Zachary set the table, there was a new ease between them. She let him stand closer than before, did not flinch when he passed behind her to reach the plates. When their hands accidentally touched as she handed him a bowl, she did not jerk away. Progress. October arrived with cooler weather and the first hints of the brutal Montana winter to come. Zachary spent long days preparing, making sure the wood was stacked, the animals had adequate shelter, and the house was properly sealed against the cold. Nora helped where she could, and he appreciated her company even when they worked in silence. One afternoon, he was on the roof patching some loose shingles when he heard a rider approaching. He climbed down to find a man on a dusty horse, looking tired and official. "You Zachary Barrett?" the man asked. "I am. What can I do for you?" "I am Marshal Briggs from Helena. I am looking for a Miss Nora Collins. Understand she might be staying here." Zachary felt every muscle in his body tense. Why? Need to ask her some questions about a matter back in Boston. At that moment, Nora emerged from the house, drawn by the sound of voices. When she saw the marshal, all the color drained from her face. "Miss Collins." Marshal Briggs touched his hat politely. "I received your letter to the Boston police. They contacted my office, asked me to look into the matter since you are in Montana territory now. You are here to arrest me." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Arrest you?" "No, madam. I am here to get your formal statement and tell you that the Boston police have arrested a man named Richard Fitzgerald on charges of assault and unlawful imprisonment. Seems you are not the first woman he did this to, just the first brave enough to come forward. 2 other women have come forward now too." Nora swayed, and Zachary was beside her in an instant, his arm around her waist to steady her. She leaned into him without hesitation, and he held her upright. "He is arrested?" she asked. "Yes, madam, and with 3 testimonies the district attorney is confident he will be convicted and sent to prison for a good long while." "He cannot come after her," Zachary demanded. "He is sitting in a jail cell in Boston. Even if he makes bail, which is unlikely given the charges, he has no jurisdiction out here. Miss Collins is safe." The marshal smiled kindly at Nora. "You did a brave thing writing that letter. You helped other women by coming forward." Nora sagged against Zachary, and he could feel her whole body shaking. "Thank you for telling me. I need to take down your formal statement if you are up for it. Won the case a lot easier with details written down official." "Come inside," Zachary said. "I will make coffee." They spent the next 2 hours at the kitchen table, while Nora recounted everything that had happened in a steady voice, though Zachary noticed she held his hand the entire time. Marshal Briggs wrote it all down carefully, asking occasional clarifying questions, his expression growing grimmer as the story progressed. When he finally left, official statement in hand, Nora stood on the porch watching him ride away until he disappeared from sight. "He cannot hurt me anymore," she said wonderingly. "He is actually going to face consequences. Justice is slow, but sometimes it arrives." She turned to him, tears streaming down her face, but her expression was lighter than he had ever seen it. "I can be free, really free. I do not have to be afraid anymore." "No, you do not." She threw her arms around him without warning, burying her face in his chest. He froze for a moment, startled, then carefully wrapped his arms around her, holding her while she cried. These were different tears than before. Not just pain, but also relief, release, the beginning of letting go. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms while the sun sank lower in the sky. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and her eyes red, but she was smiling. "Thank you for holding me. Anytime you need me to." She looked up at him, her expression searching. "I think I want to get married, really married, if you still want to." His heart kicked hard in his chest. "Are you sure? We can wait as long as you need." "I do not want to wait anymore. I want to move forward. I want to stop letting what he did control my life." She took a shaky breath. "I cannot promise I will not still have hard days. I cannot promise I will not still be afraid sometimes, but I want to try, with you. Then we will try together." He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb, the touch gentle. "We can go into town this week, talk to the preacher. Have a simple ceremony if that is what you want, or something bigger if you prefer." "Simple," she said immediately. "Just us and a couple witnesses. I do not need anything fancy." Simple it is. They were married the following Saturday in the small church in Sweetwater with Mrs. Henley and her husband standing as witnesses. Nora wore a new dress she had sewn herself from the fabric Mrs. Henley had insisted she buy, a soft blue that matched her eyes. She had even woven some late-season wildflowers into her hair. Zachary wore his best suit, brushed and pressed within an inch of its life, and tried not to let his hands shake as the preacher led them through the vows. When it came time to kiss his bride, he looked at Nora first, silently asking permission. She nodded, so he leaned down and pressed a soft, chaste kiss to her lips, there and gone in a moment. She smiled at him, and this time it was not hesitant or small. It was genuine and bright and made his heart feel too big for his chest. They had a small celebration at the general store, Mrs. Henley having prepared a cake and invited what felt like half the town. Nora was nervous at first, confronted with so many strangers, but the people of Sweetwater were warm and welcoming, and by the end of the afternoon, she was laughing at someone's story about a runaway pig. On the ride home, Nora was quiet but not in the tense, fearful way she had been when she first arrived. This was a thoughtful, peaceful quiet, "Are you all right?" Zachary asked as they pulled up to the house. "I am good. Happy, I think. It has been so long since I felt happy that I almost did not recognize it. I am glad." Inside, he started to head for his room on the ground floor as he had every night since her arrival, but her voice stopped him. "Zachary," he turned back, "we are married now. You do not have to sleep downstairs anymore." His mouth went dry. "I can if you want me to, if you are more comfortable with space. I think I want to try to be a real wife." She twisted her hands together nervously. "But I need you to be patient with me. I do not know how to do this, how to be close to someone without being afraid." He crossed to her slowly and took her hands in his, stilling their anxious movement. "Then we go slow. We only do what you are comfortable with, and if you change your mind at any point, we stop. No questions, no anger. We have the rest of our lives, Nora. There is no rush." She nodded, looking relieved. "All right. Slow." That night, they climbed the stairs together for the first time. In the bedroom that had been just hers, Zachary helped her unbutton the back of her dress with fingers that trembled slightly. She changed into her nightgown behind the privacy screen while he stripped down to his undershirt and trousers. When they finally climbed into bed together, there was an awkward moment where neither knew quite what to do. Then Nora laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "This is strange." "Very strange," he agreed, and that broke the tension. She moved closer to him, tentative, and he wrapped his arm around her carefully. She rested her head on his chest, her body stiff at first but gradually relaxing as the minutes passed. "This is nice," she whispered. "It is. Do you want more? Tonight, I mean." "Only if you do. I am content right here." He felt her relax even further, the last of the tension draining out of her. "Good, I want to someday, but maybe not tonight. Whenever you are ready." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, taking another step forward together. The days that followed settled into a new rhythm. They shared a bed each night, sometimes just sleeping, sometimes talking in the darkness about dreams and fears and everything between. Zachary was always careful to let Nora set the pace, never pushing, always giving her space to decide what she was comfortable with. Slowly, over weeks, she became more comfortable with his touch. Holding hands became natural, then his arm around her waist, then kisses that lingered longer than that first chaste brush of lips in the church. She began initiating contact too, reaching for his hand first, leaning into him when they sat together on the porch in the evenings. Nearly 3 months after their wedding, on a cold November night with snow threatening, they finally came together as husband and wife in the fullest sense. It was awkward and tender, and Nora cried halfway through, but Zachary held her and they finished together, and afterwards she clung to him and said, "I did it. I am not broken. I am not." "You were never broken," he murmured into her hair. "Just healing." Winter arrived with a vengeance, trapping them in the house for days at a time during the worst storms. But Zachary found he did not mind being snowed in with Nora. They cooked together, read together, played cards, talked endlessly about everything and nothing. She taught him to bake bread properly, laughing at his clumsy attempts to knead the dough. He taught her to carve small figures from wood, a skill he had learned from his grandfather. On Christmas Eve, he gave her a music box he had ordered from a catalog, months in advance. When she opened it and heard the tinkling melody, she burst into tears. "My mother had one just like this," she said through her sobs. "I sold it after she died because I needed the money. I never thought I would hear that sound again. Are these good tears or bad tears?" "Good. These are good tears." She gave him a new shirt she had sewn, the stitching so fine and perfect it looked like something from a fancy store. She also gave him a book, an expensive leather-bound copy of stories by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I concede that he might possibly be slightly better than Dickens. she said with a smile that told him the admission cost her nothing. "Though I reserve the right to change my mind after you read some of it aloud to me." He pulled her into his lap and kissed her soundly. "I love you, Nora Barrett." She froze, her eyes wide. He had not said those words before, not wanting to pressure her, but they had been building in him for months and he could not hold them back any longer. "I love you," he repeated. "I know I said in the beginning that I wanted a partner and a companion, and I do have that with you. But somewhere along the way, it became more. You became more. I am in love with you, with your strength and your courage and your laugh and the way you burn breakfast when you are distracted. I love all of it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too. I have for a while now, but I was afraid to say it, afraid it would make me vulnerable again. Love does make us vulnerable, but the right kind of love, the real kind, it makes us stronger too. We are stronger together than apart." She kissed him then, deep and long, and when they finally came up for air, she smiled against his lips. "Merry Christmas, husband. Merry Christmas, wife." Spring arrived slowly, the snow melting to reveal brown grass that gradually turned green. The ranch came back to life, and Zachary threw himself into the work of calving season and preparing the fields. Nora worked beside him when she could, helping with the garden, tending the chickens, even learning to milk the cow. In May, she realized she was pregnant. "Are you sure?" Zachary asked, trying to contain his excitement when she told him. "As sure as I can be. I have missed 2 monthly courses and I have been sick every morning for a week." He picked her up and spun her around, laughing like a fool. "We are going to have a baby. We are. Are you happy about it?" "Happy? Nora, I am over the moon. Are you happy?" she smiled, a hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "I am. I did not know if I would ever feel safe enough to bring a child into the world, but I do now. With you I feel safe. I will do everything I can to make sure you both stay safe. I promise you that." The pregnancy was not easy. Nora was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep food down. Zachary worried constantly, but Doc Morrison assured him it was normal and that she would feel better in the second trimester. He was right. By July, Nora had regained her energy and seemed to glow with health. Her belly rounded out, visible evidence of the life growing inside her, and Zachary found himself constantly touching it, marveling at this miracle they had created together. "Stop fussing," she would say, but she was always smiling when she said it. On a warm August evening, exactly 2 years after she had first arrived on that stagecoach looking broken and terrified, Nora went into labor. Zachary rode hell for leather into town to fetch Doc Morrison and his wife, who served as midwife, then spent the next 12 hours pacing the downstairs floor while Nora labored upstairs. Finally, just as the sun was rising, a baby's cry split the air. Zachary took the stairs 3 at a time. Mrs. Morrison met him at the door with a tired smile. "You have a son, Mr. Barrett. A healthy baby boy." He pushed past her gently and found Nora propped against pillows, sweaty and exhausted but smiling radiantly as she held a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. When she looked up at him, her eyes were bright with tears. "Come meet your son." He crossed to the bed and looked down at the tiny face peering out from the blankets. The baby had a shock of dark hair like his mother and blue eyes that would probably change color. He was perfect. "Can I hold him?" Zachary asked. Nora carefully transferred the baby to his arms. Zachary had handled plenty of newborn calves and foals, but holding his own child was entirely different. This was his son, his and Nora's, a piece of both of them combined into something new and precious. "What should we name him?" Nora asked. They had discussed names during the pregnancy but never settled on anything definitively. Now, looking down at his son, Zachary knew. Thomas. After my grandfather. He was a good man, taught me about working with my hands and being patient. I would like our son to carry his name. Thomas Barrett. Nora tested the name. I like it. Thomas James Barrett, after your grandfather and my father. Perfect. They spent the rest of the day in a blissful, exhausted haze, taking turns holding Thomas, marveling at his tiny fingers and toes, laughing when he made funny faces in his sleep. Doc Morrison checked on Nora before leaving and pronounced her healthy and recovering well. You did good work, he told Zachary. That is a fine, strong boy you have there. Over the next weeks and months, they settled into the chaos of having a newborn. Thomas was a hungry baby who woke every few hours to nurse, leaving both parents exhausted but happy. Zachary took over more of the household chores so Nora could rest when the baby slept, and she appreciated his help more than she could express. I could not do this alone, she told him one night as they sat together, Zachary rocking Thomas while Nora folded tiny baby clothes. You are not alone. You never will be again. She looked at him with such love it made his chest ache. I know, I trust that now. I trust you. As Thomas grew from a newborn to an infant, the house filled with new sounds. Baby laughter, baby crying, the nonsense sounds Thomas made as he learned to use his voice. Nora sang lullabies and Zachary told stories, and they both felt their hearts expanding to hold this new, overwhelming love. On Thomas's first birthday, they had a small celebration with some of the neighbors. Mrs. Henley came out from town with a cake, and several other ranch families brought gifts and well wishes. It was a far cry from the isolated, lonely life Zachary had lived before Nora arrived, and he was grateful for every loud, chaotic minute of it. That evening, after everyone had gone home and Thomas was sleeping soundly in his crib, Zachary and Nora sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Can you believe it has been 3 years since I arrived? Nora asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. 3 years. Sometimes it feels like forever and sometimes it feels like yesterday. I was so broken when I came here, I did not think I would ever feel whole again. And now, she tilted her face up to look at him. Now I feel more than whole, I feel complete. You did what you said you would do, Zachary. You spent forever putting me back together again. We put each other back together. I was broken too in my own way. Lonely and isolated and afraid to let anyone close. You healed me as much as I healed you. We healed each other, she agreed. She placed her hand over his. I am happy, Zachary. Really, truly happy. I never thought I would be able to say that again, but here I am. Happy wife, happy mother, happy with the life we have built together. I love you, Nora Barrett. I love you too, forever. They sat together as darkness fell, wrapped in each other and in the contentment of knowing they had found what they had both been seeking. A real partnership, a real love, a real family. It had not been easy getting here. The journey had been marked by pain and fear and hard work. But it had been worth it. Every single moment had been worth it. 2 years later, Nora gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Margaret after Nora's mother. She had Zachary's blonde hair and Nora's green eyes, and from the moment she arrived screaming into the world, she made it clear she had a personality all her own. She is fierce, Nora said with admiration as baby Margaret nursed with determined enthusiasm. She knows what she wants and she will not be ignored. She takes after her mother then, Zachary said with a grin. Thomas, now a curious 3-year-old, was fascinated by his baby sister. He wanted to help with everything, from diaper changes to bath time, and Zachary and Nora had to constantly watch that he was not too helpful and accidentally hurt her. Gentle, Thomas, Nora would remind him. She is very small and delicate. Gentle, Thomas would insist, patting Margaret's head with exaggerated care. life on the ranch continued its rhythms. The cattle grew, new calves were born each spring, the garden produced vegetables each summer, and the family grew and thrived together. Zachary expanded the house, adding another bedroom upstairs for the children and a small room downstairs that Nora claimed as her sewing space. She had started taking in some sewing work from town, making dresses and mending clothes for neighbors. It gave her spending money of her own and kept her sewing skills sharp. She was good at it, her stitches always neat and even, and word of her skills spread through the county. I could open a shop in town if I wanted, she mused one evening as she worked on a particularly elaborate wedding dress for the mayor's daughter. You want to? Zachary asked. She considered. Maybe someday when the children are older. For now, I am content working from home. But it is nice to know I have options, that I have skills I can use. It makes me feel less dependent. You are never dependent, Nora. You are my partner, remember, equal in all things. She smiled at him across the parlor where he was teaching Thomas to carve a simple whistle from wood. I know. But it still feels good to contribute financially, even if it is just a little. It is more than a little. You bring in good money from your sewing. Between that and the ranch, we are doing well. Better than well, actually. I am thinking about buying the adjoining property from old Mr. Sawyer. He wants to retire to California, and his land would double our grazing space. That is wonderful. We could really expand the herd then. We could build something substantial to pass on to Thomas and Margaret and any other children we might have. She looked up sharply. Are you hoping for more? Only if you want them. I am happy with what we have, but I would not mind a house full of children either. Whatever you want is fine with me. Ask me again in a year or two when Margaret is older and sleeping through the night, Nora said with a laugh. Right now, the thought of another pregnancy makes me tired. As it turned out, they did not have to wait that long. 15 months after Margaret's birth, Nora discovered she was pregnant again. Already, Zachary said, then immediately felt bad when he saw her expression. I mean, that is wonderful. Are you all right? Are you happy about it? I am surprised, she admitted. But yes, I am happy. Our family is growing faster than I planned, but that is all right. Children are a blessing. This pregnancy was easier than the previous two. Nora was barely sick at all and seemed to have boundless energy. She even helped with the spring branding, though Zachary tried to convince her to rest more. I am pregnant, not broken, she reminded him, and he had to laugh at the irony of those words. No, you are definitely not broken. Not anymore. Their third child, another son they named Henry, arrived on a snowy December morning. He was smaller than Thomas had been, but just as healthy, with a full head of red gold hair that surprised them both. Must have gotten that from someone back in my family line, Zachary said, running his hand gently over the baby's soft curls. My uncle had red hair. He is beautiful, Nora said, exhausted but glowing. They are all beautiful. We make beautiful babies together. That we do. With 3 children under 5, life became wonderfully chaotic. The house was never quiet, never still. There were always meals to prepare, clothes to wash, diapers to change, lessons to teach. Thomas started learning his letters. Margaret was walking and getting into everything, and baby Henry needed constant care. But through it all, Zachary and Nora remained a team. They supported each other, spelled each other when one needed a break, and made sure to carve out time just for them. Once a week, Mrs. Henley would come out from town to watch the children so Zachary and Nora could go for a ride together or just sit on the porch and talk without interruption. This is important, Zachary insisted. We need time to remember we are husband and wife, not just mother and father. Nora agreed wholeheartedly. Those weekly respites kept their connection strong and reminded them of why they had fallen in love in the first place. The years continued to pass. Thomas grew into a serious, responsible boy who loved working alongside his father. Margaret was as fierce as they had predicted, quick to defend her brothers and never backing down from a challenge. Henry was the peacemaker, gentle and thoughtful, often mediating between his older siblings when they squabbled. When Thomas was 10, Margaret was 7, and Henry was 5, Nora surprised everyone by announcing she was pregnant again. "I thought we were done," Zachary said, shocked but pleased. "So did I. But apparently God has other plans." This pregnancy was harder. Nora was older now, in her mid-30s, and she felt every ache and pain more acutely than she had with the previous 3. Doc Morrison watched her carefully and insisted she rest more. "No more spring branding for you," he told her sternly. "You have 3 children to care for and a ranch to help run. You need to take care of yourself too." For once, Nora listened. She let Zachary and the older children help more around the house, and she spent her last trimester resting and preparing for the new baby. Their 4th child, a daughter they named Sarah, arrived in late spring. She was the largest of their babies, almost 10 pounds, and the delivery was long and difficult. There were some tense moments when Doc Morrison looked worried, but eventually Sarah emerged, red-faced and howling with indignation at being forced into the world. "She is healthy," Doc Morrison announced with relief. "And so are you, Nora. But I am going to strongly suggest this be your last pregnancy. Another one could be dangerous at your age." Nora, exhausted and holding her new daughter, nodded agreement. "4 is a perfect number. We are done." Zachary kissed her forehead gently. "4 is more than perfect. 4 is a blessing." Sarah proved to be a sweet-natured baby who rarely cried and seemed content to watch the chaos of her older siblings with wide, curious eyes. Thomas, now a young man of 10, was incredibly gentle with her, often holding her and telling her stories about the ranch. Margaret took her role as big sister seriously, helping change diapers and singing songs to soothe Sarah when she fussed. Henry appointed himself Sarah's protector, following Nora around whenever she carried the baby to make sure nothing happened to his little sister. "Our family is complete," Nora said one evening as they all sat around the dinner table, the children chattering about their day while Sarah slept in her cradle nearby. "This is everything I never knew I wanted." "Everything we both wanted," Zachary corrected. He looked around the table at their children, healthy and happy and loved, then at his wife, the woman who had arrived broken and afraid and had blossomed into this strong, confident mother and partner. "Everything we built together." The years continued their steady march. Thomas grew tall and strong, working the ranch alongside his father, and learning everything Zachary could teach him about cattle and horses and the land. Margaret discovered she had her mother's gift with a needle and started helping with the sewing business, which had indeed expanded into a small shop in Sweetwater. Henry showed a talent for numbers and helped keep the ranch books, meticulously recording every expense and profit. Sarah, the baby, was learning to read and showing signs of being the scholar of the family, always with her nose in a book. When Thomas turned 18, Zachary sat him down for a serious talk. "This ranch will be yours someday," he said. "You and your siblings, but you are the oldest. You will probably end up running it. I want to make sure that is what you want, not just what you think I expect." Thomas, who had grown into a thoughtful young man who looked remarkably like his father, nodded seriously. "It is what I want, Pa. I love this land, this life. I cannot imagine doing anything else." "Good. Because I am going to start transferring more responsibility to you. You are old enough and skilled enough to handle it. Time for you to step into your role as a man." So Thomas took on more of the ranch management, while Zachary began to step back slightly. still working but no longer carrying the full burden alone. It felt good to share the load, to see his son growing into a capable rancher in his own right. One summer evening, when the air was warm and heavy with the scent of prairie grass, Zachary and Nora sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were alone, the children off doing various activities, and for once the house was quiet. "Hard to believe," Zachary said softly. "What is?" "That it has been nearly 20 years since you arrived on that stagecoach. 20 years since I saw you step down looking so lost and afraid, and I thought to myself that you needed help." Nora smiled, the lines around her eyes crinkling. They were both graying now, both showing the marks of the years and the hard work of ranch life. But to Zachary, she was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "I did need help," she agreed. "I needed someone to believe I could heal, even when I did not believe it myself. You did the hard work. I just provided a safe place for you to do it. You provided more than that. You provided love and patience and partnership. You gave me back my faith in people, in men, in the possibility of happiness." She reached over and took his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "You saved me, Zachary. We saved each other." They sat in comfortable silence, hands joined, watching the sky turn from blue to purple to black. Stars began to emerge, pinpricks of light in the vast Montana darkness. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Nora asked quietly. "When I told you I was broken. I said no one is so broken they cannot be mended. You were right. You spent forever putting me back together again, just like you promised. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." She turned to look at him, love shining in her eyes. "I know you would. That is who you are, Zachary Barrett, a man who keeps his promises. Only the important ones, all of them." He pulled her closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder the way she had so many times over the years. They had built a good life together, a family, a legacy. It had not been easy. There had been hard winters and dry summers, sick cattle and money troubles, sleepless nights with colicky babies and worried days when children were ill. But through it all, they had each other. "I love you, Nora. I have loved you almost from the beginning, and I will love you until the day I die. I love you too, forever and always." Inside the house, they could hear the children returning, Thomas's deep voice mixing with Margaret's laughter and Henry's patient explanations of something to young Sarah. Their family, loud and chaotic and perfect. "Should we go in?" Nora asked. "In a minute. Let me just hold you a little longer." So they sat together in the gathering darkness. Two people who had found each other when they both needed it most, who had built something beautiful from broken pieces, who had kept their promises to each other through 2 decades of life's challenges and joys. The mail-order bride had arrived broken, and the lonely rancher had spent forever putting her back together again. But in doing so, he had put himself back together too. They had healed each other, loved each other, and created a family that would carry their legacy forward long after they were gone. It was everything they had hoped for and more. It was, quite simply, exactly what both of them had needed. Years continued to unfold like pages in a well-loved book. Margaret married a kind blacksmith from Sweetwater and had 3 children of her own, but still ran the sewing shop with her mother. Henry went to university in Helena to study accounting, but returned every summer to help with the ranch, and eventually settled in Sweetwater as the town's bookkeeper and financial advisor. Sarah became a schoolteacher, educating the children of Sweetwater and the surrounding ranches, including her nieces and nephews. Thomas married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property, and they built a house on the far edge of the Barrett land. Together, they ran the ranch with Zachary's guidance, and in time they had 4 children of their own. Zachary and Nora became grandparents many times over. their house filled with visiting grandchildren on weekends and holidays. They grew old together gracefully, their hair turning silver, their bodies showing the effects of decades of hard work, but their love remaining as strong as ever. On a warm spring morning, when Zachary was 68 and Nora was 65, they sat together on the porch as they had done countless times before. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and thriving under Thomas's management. Their grandchildren were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the breeze. "We did good," Nora said softly. "We did. We really did. No regrets, not a single one. Only that I did not find you sooner, that we did not have even more years together." He squeezed her hand. "We have had plenty of years. Good years, and we are not done yet." "No," she agreed. "Not yet. We still have more life to live, more grandchildren to spoil, more sunsets to watch together. And I intend to watch every one of them with you by my side." They sat together in the sunshine, these two people who had found each other in the midst of brokenness and had built something whole and beautiful. The mail-order bride and the lonely rancher, now neither mail-order nor lonely, just husband and wife, partners and best friends, grandparents and the foundation of a family that would continue for generations. Their story had started with pain and fear, but it had become something else entirely. It had become a testament to the power of patience and kindness, to the possibility of healing, to the transformative nature of real love. And as they sat together surrounded by the fruits of their decades of partnership, both Zachary and Nora knew that every struggle had been worth it. Every hard day had led them to this moment of peace and contentment. They had spent forever putting each other back together again, and in doing so, they had created forever together. It was more than enough. It was everything.